This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Lindsay Pinchuk. She took a $500 investment, left a high-powered job, and founded her first company, which she bootstrapped and grew to a seven-figure year-after-year business, reaching 3 million users each month. She led her company through its acquisition less than a decade later. When she exited, she did so with one mission, and that was to help other women entrepreneurs build their businesses using her marketing made simple strategies. She launched her top half of 1% global podcast, which is the highest level you can get just about. And and that is called Dear Found Her, which has become a movement for women 40 plus who are starting their own businesses. Lindsay's has appeared as a guest on over 50 top rated podcasts, has contributed to 300 plus television segments, appearing on Access, The Doctors, and many regular local news outlets. She has a combined social media following of close to 90,000. Outside of work, she spends most of her free time with her husband and two daughters, and they love going to concerts together. So Lindsay, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks so much, Steve. Thank you for having me.
So I have to ask right out of the gate, concerts are awesome. So what's been some really great ones that you've seen lately?
So the last really great one that I saw Zach Bryan at the Big House.
Oh,
Which was, I think they said it was the largest concert attendance in the history of stadiums in the United States. And it was really awesome.
wow.
And that was, I have to say that was a suggestion of my daughters. And
Yeah,
now my kids are at a place where they are requesting concerts. And
great.
I don't always like the concerts they request, but this one I really liked, and it was so much fun. We went as a family.
Yeah, you kind of have to do that sometimes. I can remember as a long time ago, but my youngest daughter talked me into going to a Spice Girls concert. So there you go.
I saw the Spice Girls too back in the day.
Okay, that's great. So give us a little context. I know we just read the bio, but tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you became interested in business and a little bit about where you are today. So give us a little story of your journey.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up outside of Detroit, Michigan, in the suburbs of Detroit. That is where I am from, and that is where I call home, even though I live in Chicago. I went to the University of Michigan, and after I graduated, I moved to Chicago and I started a career in advertising. I loved working, and I worked in ad sales. I worked for some of the largest magazines in the world. I worked at Hearst, I worked at Nickelodeon, I worked at Time Inc. And I had a career that I really loved. And I truly became an entrepreneur a little bit accidentally. I was pregnant or newly pregnant, no one knew. And we were living in Chicago, and I didn't have any family here, and none of my friends were pregnant. And so I said to my husband, like, there has to be a place where I can find other women who are having babies. And there really wasn't. And so I ended up starting to host events in my spare time from work. And we started hosting fitness events and shopping events. And then I started bringing in guest speakers. And before I knew it, I was charging for the events. I had brands that were asking me to be a part of the events. And given my background in advertising and sponsorships, it was very seamless for me to build out those kind of programs. So I ended up having my daughter. And after she was a really good baby, I will say, she was such a good baby that I was able to really take my business to the next level while I was on maternity leave. And I always joke that if I had my number two first, there would have been no Bump Club. That was my company because she did not sleep until she was like 10. So my first daughter started sleeping at like 5 weeks, and we were home, and it was winter, and I was working on the business. And by the time it was time for me to go back to work, I really didn't want to. And I was starting to make money, and I knew that this was kind of the time that I needed to either put a stake in the ground and go for it or kind of walk away from it. And I went for it. And I decided to leave my job about 3 weeks after I went back from maternity leave, and Bump Club and Beyond became my new way of life, and that was my company. I grew that company over the next decade to from hosting events in Chicago to hosting events in 35 cities across the country. We worked with brands like Target and Nordstrom and all of the different baby brands out there on programming. And we were reaching about 3 million users per month.
Wow.
And in 2019, I was approached for acquisition. And this company wanted to buy my business because of my relationship with Target. They were working with Target in the beauty space, they wanted to work with them in the baby space. And they couldn't because Target was like, well, we have a partner, and this is a partner who has um, a very trusted voice in the baby space. We're not just going to like work with some agency. So they bought me, and I worked at the new company for a couple of years. It really was not great. It was a very abusive relationship. And 2 years in, I decided that I was going to exit. And so when I exited, my goal was really that I wanted to help other women grow their businesses very similarly to how I grew mine, which was with no outside investments. I bootstrapped the whole thing. And I built Bump Club and Beyond really through these very simple marketing practices that to me seemed very logical, but I know that it's not always second nature to a business owner, and I wanted to teach that to other women. And so I launched my podcast, Dear Found Her. What started as a podcast has really become a movement, and now we're really focused on reaching women over 40 who are starting businesses or who have businesses and just really want to take it to the next level. And so through Dear Founder, we have the podcast, we have a group mentorship, um, we have online networking community, we host events, and then I have a newsletter. And so I kind of have built like a similar community for women business owners over 40. It's very similar to what I did for pregnant women and new moms through Bump Club. But it's just obviously a little bit different, and it's to my life stage now. And so that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm doing.
That sounds fantastic. And isn't it interesting how many times, your story is not unique in the sense that, you loved your work and you started this business and things are going great. And then you get a toxic leader and, somebody that you just cannot work with. And with all the leadership training and all the emphasis on leadership, you'd think that that would happen less than it does. But I hear it all the time.
You know, it's interesting because in that story there were two times. Both times that I left corporate America was due to a toxic leader. When I left Hearst, there was really no reason for me to have to have had like leave Hearst. When I was working at Hearst, the VP of Hearst, Michael Clinton, was writing books on the side. Everyone there had something on the side. And what I was doing was not infringing on my work. I was still making my goal. I was exceeding my goal. I was one of the most beloved sales reps at Good Housekeeping magazine when I left. And I came back from maternity leave to a very toxic boss who said, I heard what you've been doing and I don't like it. And if you're going to be working on my time, then we're going to have a problem. And I knew in that moment, right, that like she was going to make my life hell. She was a woman who had gotten divorced and didn't have kids. And I think there was a little bit of envy. And she really could not separate her personal feelings from this life stage that I was in. And I mean, long story short, she was actually let go shortly after I left. Like, she didn't last very long either, but she was horrible. And to talk to another female employee the way that she treated me was, to your point, so toxic. And then later on, when I left Bump Club, it was also very much due to toxic leadership. And it was due to really the company taking my company and buying my company and saying that I was going to get to run the company and still be the face of the company. But then they started really limiting what I was able to do. They wanted my face on everything, but they were really trying to pull the puppet strings. And I was like, I can't be the face of a brand if I can't be myself. And there was a lot of toxicity there, and it was very contentious. It was a very and it was a contentious exit too. I mean, it up until the minute I left. So to your point, yes, leadership does leadership does play a big role in all of it.
Yeah, I have a slide in my leadership presentations that I often use that say, people don't leave companies, they leave leaders. That they just and it's mind-boggling. I mean, why would a company buy your successful company that's going crazy and you're the leader and then try and control you? It makes no sense, but it happens all the time.
Yes, it does happen all the time, and it's interesting because I was really like upset and down on myself for a long time after once the sale happened and this was going on. And I was kind of like, why did I do this? What did I do? Oh my God. And the more I talked to people in my entrepreneurial circles, I realized that this actually is very common. And it's the like the Sarah Blakeleys of the world. Those are not very common stories. The stories like mine are very common in terms of corporations buying smaller businesses and just not really necessarily caring. It's crazy to me that they would have spent money on my company and not wanted it to succeed, but that really is what they did.
Crazy. So now, do you, in your business that you have now, do you individually coach women as well?
So it's interesting that you ask that. So when I first started, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do when I first started. Like I knew I wanted to start this podcast and I wanted to share stories. And then people started asking me, sorry, let me back up. First, I said, I sent out an email to everyone I knew and I said, I'm taking clients. But when I said that, I really meant consulting clients. And so I started working on various brand projects, which I do from time to time. Now I have one major consulting client right now, but I was working on different CPGs and I was working on some food brands. But then when I started my podcast, the listeners started reaching out to me and saying, can I hire you? I'm not a certified coach. And so I didn't want to use the word coaching, but I started mentoring women and I started mentoring them one on one. I had a program that I created, 3 months. And what ended up happening was I found that I was telling all the women the same things. Like it didn't matter if it was an interior designer or a marketing agency or a doctor. I like my strategy is my strategy and it's what I would tell any business owner, big or small. And it's the same strategy that I've used for nine-figure brands or for small businesses. And so what ended up happening was I asked my community, how do you want to work with me? And through their responses, I developed my group mentorship program,
Mhm.
which to me is so much more efficient for both the client and me, but also it has created this community that the community is like the cherry on top. I never would have expected this to happen. And now I'm on my fifth cohort. It's a year-long program. And through that group mentorship, I do meet with the women one on one, but it's not like a one on one, always on coaching.
Yeah.
And I actually say no. Like if people reach out to me, they say, but I want to work with you one on one. I say, this is the program and this actually works so much better. You get so much more support. And either they take it or they leave it.
I love this idea. I think there's a lot to be said, and I've experienced this as well, is that when you work with cohorts, they learn from each other as well. It has that ability to somebody says something and a colleague or a person at the same level can say, well, I don't think that, or I challenge you on that, or whatever. So you can get that dynamic back and forth. And I think they learn a lot from that as well, not just hearing from, you as the coach or the mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the interesting thing is these women have developed these incredible friendships and working relationships, and a lot of them have worked on projects together or helped each other get clients. And in fact, about a week or two ago, I happened to be going to New York for some other stuff, and my founding cohort on their own made plans to meet in New York from all over the country. It happened to coincide, and so I spent the morning with them, and then I re-engaged with them in the afternoon. But just watching them together, like they're all really good friends, and they know everything about their each other's businesses, which is also amazing because the way they help each other, to your point, and the way they support each other is more valuable than any program you can get out there. And they're still friends. It's been, I mean, we're now going on, it's almost 2 years since we started.
And this is called a mastermind group. So that, that group together where they're working at the same level but helping each other and then being led by you as the leader. That's a classic mastermind structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So is it exclusively women?
So this program is exclusively women. I say that I help women over 40. There have been women who have come in who are not over 40, and that is totally fine. But I like them to know that it's
Yeah.
women who are a little more mature, and that's okay. And I think the women who gravitate towards me and my program are also women who just don't know where to start with their marketing, and they're also really nervous about social media. They didn't grow up with social media. And so they're uncomfortable with not just being on camera, but like the actual technicalities of sharing things on social media. And so we really do things simply and slowly, not just on social. And I think that's the other reason that they love it is that my belief is that social media is just a piece of your marketing puzzle. And I really do spend a lot of time talking about events and talking about partnerships and email marketing and like the importance of your website, as well as basic principles like having boundaries and having a good offer. I mean, these are all things that are so important to your business. But yes, to answer your question, it is for women. I do not let men into this program. I've had a few who have offered or asked or wanted to, and it's not a discriminatory thing. It's just it changes the dynamic.
For sure. How often does this cohort meet?
So each cohort meets 3 times a month as a cohort, and then as a group, Marketing Made Simple has 1 office hours a month. So it's 4 times a month that they meet, and each cohort lasts a year. And I run about 2 cohorts at the same time. I've been starting them in the spring and in the fall.
And I'm just curious of the structure, if that's okay to keep
Yeah,
asking.
of
So
course.
how long are those meetings then?
So each of the meetings is about an hour. I slot an hour and I teach a lesson for the first 30 minutes. Follows my framework. So, like lesson 1 is always lesson 1, lesson 10 is always lesson 10. So it follows my framework. I teach the lesson for 30 minutes and then we do a Q&A and they can ask me anything. It doesn't have to be about the lesson. And if they need me to go over, oftentimes I'll let it go over 10 to 15 minutes if people have enough questions.
And it isn't specific to marketing, it's business in general.
It really has a focus on marketing. It's called Marketing Made Simple for Small Business.
Okay.
But through Marketing Made Simple for Small Business, we do talk a lot about storytelling and your offer and boundaries. And, there's all these other principles that kind of weigh into the marketing piece, but it really is foundational marketing. And the big picture of it is that you cannot go on to have like ad campaigns and funnels and SEO if you don't have the foundation in place. And so it's really making sure that that is in place through your social media, your website, your emails, your events, your partnerships, and your publicity. And then from there, it's building upon that.
Is this something that you do over Zoom or do you meet face to face with these meetings?
It's over Zoom because these women come from all over the country.
Okay.
I do have networking events for Dear Found Her, my company, in Chicago or outside of Chicago. We do them once a month, but that's not really contingent upon Marketing Made Simple. But I do get a lot of people join Marketing Made Simple from those events.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Well, I'm really interested because I think it's such a great model and the meeting in Chicago. So is that where you're based now? You live in Chicago?
Yes, I'm based in Chicago, outside of Chicago.
Yeah, cool. I went to school at Northwestern, so I love
Me
Chicago.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
went to grad school at Northwestern.
yeah, same with me. So very interesting.
Where'd you get your degree in?
So I'm a physical therapist.
Okay, that's awesome.
So I went to physical therapy school at Northwestern University and was treated patients and did that thing for which I loved for 16 years. And then I was asked to be the CEO of a large physical therapy rehab company in the Pacific Northwest, and so I did that for 19 years. So I kind of feel like I had two careers. I had my career where I treated patients and did the hands-on and loved every bit of that. And it's very hard to give that up going into administration, but yet what I found was that I had this real knack for leadership and I loved that equally so. And so
Yeah.
kind of felt like I had two careers. So
Yeah. I loved going to Northwestern too. I went to the downtown campus though. I
me
went,
too. Yeah.
yeah, I got my master's while I was working at Hearst. So
Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. No, it's Chicago's a great city, and the funny story about that was my wife and I headed off for Chicago to go to graduate school, and we were from the Pacific Northwest and had no experience in the rest of the country really. And so I was like, oh gosh, we're gonna have to deal with this concrete jungle and this huge city and all this stuff. And within 6 weeks, we're like, man, this place is awesome. The people are friendly. The thing I love about Chicago is it seems like every single block in that city has a one-of-a-kind restaurant that has great food, and everyone's so nice. You feel like family on the second time you go in there. So,
yeah, Chicago is a great city.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Now you've had a lot of exposure too. You've been on multiple TV show appearances. Why do you do all those things? Is that to build your brand? Is it to build your company and your cohort, or do you just love spreading the word and that's why you do it?
No, so I think it's interesting that you this is a really good question. So when I first started Bump Club, I I would say it was about a year in, and we had a huge following here in Chicago. And these two women who later became my friends approached me, and they said, "We're going to start a PR firm for mom-based businesses, and we would love for you to be our first client." And so I was like, "Well, I have no money for PR." I mean, at the time, it was like I was bootstrapping everything. They gave me a good deal, and they were amazing. And their whole thing was you need to get in front of more people and build your trust and authority. And so they would pitch me in a way that I would go on to different TV segments and lend my expertise as a parenting expert. And I became a parenting expert. I mean, I was constantly being asked to come on TV, whether it was, talking about the best new products for the season or I remember very specifically when Kate Middleton was pregnant, like I was called in by numerous local TV networks here to comment on her fashion and comment on her baby gear. And so it really elevated me as an expert. And when I started doing events in other cities, that also helped me to break into these cities and people were taking note of what I was doing and people were seeing me and they were like, "Oh, well, she's on TV, like she must have something going." And so throughout the whole time that I was on Bump Club, that I was running Bump Club, I often did TV segments. I had regular segments that I did really in the baby and kid space. Now, a lot of that was for brand awareness. I will say this, and people ask me this all the time. We used to go into, I think, like 15 different cities for this big, like, expo that we used to do. And it was our event that we used to do. And every time we would go into a city, my PR team would pitch me, and I'd get a TV segment. We'd talk about the event that was coming up. There was never any ticket sale increase from those. And so I think it's really important to point that out because oftentimes PR and TV like that doesn't necessarily translate to sales right away. But over time, it might lead to sales like I had sponsors that wanted to be a part of what we were doing because they saw we were on TV. Or over time, people would see me on TV and they would be like, "Oh, that event is coming to our city, so we want to go to that event." I saw the TV segment that she shared online because I shared all the segments online. You don't have to be local to consume them. Now, I really don't do much TV anymore. Um, One, I kind of find it a pain in the ass. Like really, I mean, I like when I started Dear Found Her, the interesting thing is that when I started Dear Found Her, I it was November, like it was November-ish of 2021, and I didn't drop my first episode till January. And so that November, I did a gift guide, and I did a gift guide that was like my favorite female founded gifts, and it was to promote what I was about to do, which was launch this podcast. And so I reached out to an old TV producer that I had a connection with, and I said, "Do you want me to come on and present my gift guide?" It was something I did all the time with Bump Club. I said, "But it's female founded gifts. It's not in the parenting space anymore." And she brought me on, and it was a great segment, and it was a great launch for Dear Found Her. I don't find the need to have to go on TV locally
Mhm.
anymore to promote my brand. Doing things like this and being on podcasts is actually much more efficient for me to get in the ears of other people who are potentially looking for help with their own business, who might want some marketing tips and subscribe to my newsletter. Um, and then also, like when I have guests on my podcast and they share the podcast, to me, that's worth way more in terms of publicity than me having to do hair and makeup and pull
Mhm.
product and then like schlep downtown with all my stuff and go into the studio and like it's just not so worth it for me anymore. If I'm presented with an opportunity or if someone calls me and asks me to come in and comment on a certain topic, then sure. But for me right now in this stage, I think there are far better ways for me to gain publicity and buzz than going on local TV.
Well, I think the industry has changed, right? It used to be, you're not that old, but a decade ago or so, it was TV probably was the medium that would promote that, but now influencers, do it online way more than they do it on TV. So,
Totally. And it's interesting that you say that because I will say that I've had a handful of TV segments that I've gotten from Dear Found Her, and it's just kind of been me reaching out to old producers that I know, and if I have an idea and asking to come on. Every time I share those segments, which most of them are very evergreen, meaning I can share them. It doesn't matter when I share them. No one really, I look the same, kind of. I mean, no one really knows that it was 5 years ago. Every time I share those segments on social media, they do get a ton of engagement and people do listen to them and people love them, but they don't necessarily know they were from like 2021. And I
Yeah,
think that that just goes to show that it's okay to not be on TV all the time.
yeah, that's really interesting. So give us the genesis of Dear Founder. Why the name and what does that mean to you?
So when I started Dear Found Her, it really it was important to me that I had a brand that spoke to female founders, and I wanted it to be like my letter every week. Like every week I wanted to be writing a letter, hence sharing a letter through a podcast to female founders to speak to them and to share knowledge and wisdom, and not always the good, right? Like when I share things that are like awful things that have happened to me in business, usually those things get much more traction than like the actual positive things that happen in business. And so Dear Found Her to me was really a way to say like, Dear, from a branding perspective, Dear Found Her, this week we're going to share, or I have a great guest. And it's really my letter to female entrepreneurs who want to build and expand their business. I did trademark it and it is trademarked, and we're working on the founder trademark too. So um, on its own, but that's really the genesis of it, and it was very important to me that when people saw the brand, they knew it was for women entrepreneurs.
So the women in this cohort and what you're doing now, I know this is a general question, but I want to ask it anyway. What is it that women 40 plus founders of companies starting out, what is their biggest fear and what do you help them with? When they look at this, what are they thinking and what are they apprehensive about?
Their biggest fear is that they don't know where to start, mostly from a marketing standpoint and secondary from like a launching off standpoint. Like there are women actually who are in my cohorts who have had businesses for a long time and they're just like totally stuck. And we get in there and I'm like, no, do this, and this with your marketing. And it's like eye opening to them, but it's very, very, very simple. And they don't know. I would say most people come to me and sign up for our mentorship or for our networking community. One, for community, and two, to get unstuck and to really understand that anyone can do it. I mean, and that's really how I talk to the women in my community as I talk to my friends. I am friends with a lot of them. I share things. I am very open and honest with them. And I would say the number one compliment I get is that people meet me and they say, you're just like you are on social media. And I'm like, no shit, like no shit. Like, yes, like
Yeah.
I'm not like pretending to be someone that I'm not. And that's why I want people to come to me and to be a part of this. And I want them to know that I have done this, I've done this twice, and you can do it too. And so I think that they feel um the programs are very accessible. I'm accessible. There's it's not like I'm like some shiny object they can't reach out to. They have the ability to ask me questions. We talk a lot, and I really guide them through it. Like I handhold them through the things that they are so afraid of, which number one is really social media and number two is technology. So those are really the hangups for women over 40.
And the other thing that I've seen, I'm always shocked when you see the research or the articles that are put out there that it's harder for women entrepreneurs to raise money compared to men. And if you look at that alone, if you're dealing with a company, now you bootstrapped it, and so you can give that experience, but sometimes you need to raise funds and need to raise money to get this thing launched.
Yes. And, you know, it's funny because a lot of what I concentrate on is really small business. And so a lot of these women at the moment, when they come to me, are not necessarily looking to raise money or don't need to raise money. A lot of them are going through like a 2.0 or they're pivoting and they are really looking to own a business or start a business or expand upon a business to really fit a life stage that they're going through at the moment. I have had some women who have come to me and who have wanted to raise money. And the great thing about me and my network and dear found her is the minute they say that, I know exactly who to connect them to. I have had women on the show who own VCs that are for women, and I've connected them with those people. Or I've known other women who have been on the show who have raised money, and I connect them for that, that connection so that they can help guide them. So it's also about the community and really the resources that we provide and my network. I'm very generous to share my network with the women who are coming into my orbit.
That's what a lot of people, in my experience, don't really understand until they're in it, like in a coaching relationship or working with someone who's got more experience, mentoring, whatever you want to call it. A lot of times there's one of the most important things of that relationship is the people that person knows, and connect you with them and introduce you to that person and go with that. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't come into those relationships expecting, yet when they discover it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Because people like you and I and others that work in this area, we tend to know a lot of people, and we're not afraid to say that's not my expertise. I know somebody who's better at that than I am.
It's also not even saying it's not my expertise. Like sometimes people come to me and they'll say, I'd like to hire you for social media or whatever. And like, it might not be a project I necessarily want to work on. I can, but it might not be something I have time for at the moment. But I want to be able to introduce them to good people who can help them as well. I am so open with my, like I was saying, my resources, my network, and those introductions, but also like I don't feel like anyone's like encroaching on me if they do the same thing as me. Like I have women who come into my program who do very similar things. They support women in other ways, and we could be deemed competitors, but to me there is no competition. It's like it's very much that the more the merrier, and the more we're lifting each other up, the more we all will rise, and I firmly believe that. um I had two women come into my first cohort. They both were social media managers, and I think the first call they were both like oh my god, like this woman is my competition. And slowly but surely they realized that one, they're each one person, and two, it's nice to have someone who is in your network that knows exactly what you do on a day-to-day basis that you can ask questions of. And now those two women work together. They support each other, they put content out together, they refer clients to one another, and I refer clients to both of them. And that's the other thing about my network also. I've hired a lot of the women who have come into my program. Like I just ran an event in Bethesda, Maryland a couple weeks ago, and my photographer came from my network. My event planner came from my network. I had a co-host of the event and she came from the network, and they all lived in Bethesda. And that was something that I never would have. That was not like in my wheelhouse or my intent when I started this, but it's very natural for me. And so it's like, why wouldn't we continue to support each other and hire one another and be there for one another? And so it's really been amazing. And I've watched a lot of them hire one another, which has also been awesome.
It's so refreshing to be in that environment. Zero sum game, or someone's got to win and someone's got to lose for me to win, is just so negative. And the fact
So
that
negative.
you can bring everybody with you and everybody rises, that mindset and looking at it from that perspective, not only is the most effective, but it just feels good. It feels like you're doing something greater than what you can do.
Yes, and I firmly agree with that. I do want to share a story actually about someone who didn't, if you don't mind, someone who didn't have that mentality, because I think it's a really good learning lesson. And I share this in my mentorship all the time.
Love to hear it. Yeah.
So I had a woman who was one of my first one-on-one mentees, and she did a lot of like social media management for small business and like some email marketing and some basic marketing stuff. And I really helped her to get her like her messaging down and get her business off the ground. And I shared a lot of my information with her. The stuff that she was doing is stuff that I do all the time for some of my bigger clients and my mentees. Like I mean it's very similar. We're both in marketing. We're very different, and that's okay. I mean, I think at one point she even had a podcast too. And when she completed the mentorship, I have a survey that I hand out to everyone, and I gave her my survey. It's a Google form, and she filled it out, and she gave me like glowing numbers and glowing reviews. And then it got to the bottom, and I said, would you like to leave a testimonial? And she wrote no.
Okay.
And I think that she like felt intimidated. And I think she felt like she didn't want me using her name on my marketing materials that she went through my program. And so that's fine. I run into her from time to time. But guess what? I never refer her. And there have been many, many opportunities for me to refer her for business. But instead, I look to the two women in my mentorship who have been nothing but supportive of me and who continue to share the mentorship with other people. And we have a great relationship. Those are the people that I want to refer and that I want in my wheelhouse. Right? I mean, it was the craziest thing to me. And I think she totally shot herself in the foot, really and truly. She could have had so many clients sent her way from my network, and I won't refer people to her.
Absolutely. No, you've got to have the right, especially if you're going to refer people, it's a reflection on you. If
Mm-hmm.
you refer somebody and they go into a negative situation or whatever, then that comes back on you a little bit too. So you got to be comfortable with who you refer to, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I could predict what you might answer this, but I'm going to ask you because I want to hear what you say. So, when you built this company from the bootstraps and you doing all these things now with these cohorts and helping other women, what's your superpower, that helps you be so successful with all you've done?
I would say that I'm a connector. And like truly, like I've always been someone who wants to connect people with one another. I want my friends to be friends. Even at a young age, like I wanted my dance friends to know my school friends and my camp friends to know my school friends. And we would go to parties on the weekend at other schools, and I would be so excited to connect all of my friends together. I find it so weird that kids, at least mine, like do not really do that as much anymore. But that's
Yeah.
kind of where I was brought up, and that's how I was brought up. And when I went into the working world, a lot of people would ask me for advice on. We traveled a lot before we had kids. Like, tell us your recommendations, and I would connect them to like our tour guide in Thailand and what we did in Buenos Aires and all of these different things. And I always really just thrived on connecting people with the best of everything. And so when I started Bump Club, to me, that was the most important thing, was connecting this community with one another and then connecting them with what I thought was the very best of the best in terms of products to make their life easier as parents. And people would reach out to me and they would say, "Oh, can we sponsor? Can we give you money? Can we do this?" And I would always and if it wasn't something I would use, I would say no. And later on, my business manager would be like, "You're crazy," and I'd be like, "No, I'm not crazy. Like, my community is everything, and my connection with them is everything, and their connection with each other is everything, and I'm not going to compromise that with a bad product." And so I would say my superpower really is the ability to connect people, and to connect people in a very real way. Like when I'm having a conversation with someone and they mention something, I'll be like, "Oh, I know someone. I know someone for that. Let me connect you." And we'll get off the Zoom or the call or whatever, and I'll right away email them and I'll connect them. And that is something that is just inherent to me and to what I do. And I have built two businesses based on connection and community.
It's funny. My friends tease me because they always say that I say, and I guess I say it a lot, is something will come up and I'll often say, "Oh, I got a guy for that." So,
Right?
yeah,
What did
I
you think
mean,
I was going to say?
well, just your ability to build relationships and connect with people, and you kind of took it more of you connect others with people, but I can also just sense over this conversation that you know how to build a relationship with people, and so to connect people, you got to build a relationship with them first. So
Yes.
I think it's all pretty much the same. You've had exposure to a lot of entrepreneurs and founders and companies and whatever. So what do you think the mistakes are that people make in the early stages of putting a company together that you've seen that maybe you can help people avoid?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make early on is they are focused on money first. And I'm not saying money isn't important, but I think that if you are like nickel and diming everything and you are not willing to invest time and money into your business and you're putting your profit before anything else, I just don't think it's going to be successful, to be very honest. I mean, I think it's different if you have hard costs and you don't have the money, obviously, to cover it. But, for me with the service based business, like when I started Bump Club, I didn't even think about the money. I mean, that wasn't even on the radar. It was like, I need this service. And so I'm going to see what I can do with it. And because it was very natural, and because it was seamless to me. I was pregnant and I was talking about it and I was sharing things, and this is before social media, so I was sharing things on my blog, and I made this connection with people, and from there I was able to monetize it. But even the 8 years I owned Bump Club, I was really like, maybe it's not such a great thing, but like I never really like sat down and like made a big budget. Like I had a financial person who helped me with everything, but I was really always focused on the community, and I was focused on the product first and the customer experience. Like those were my number one goals. And I will say that when we were bought, that was not the case anymore. And every little line item had a budget. And if it didn't fit into that budget nicely for like every little event, it was like all hell would break loose. And what happened when that happened was the community and the company lost its soul. And people didn't want to interact with it anymore. And people were like, everything's sponsored and this doesn't feel authentic anymore. And I think when you put profits above everything else, oftentimes you can shoot yourself in the foot. Like it's important and there needs to be a balance, but follow here first and make sure that your brand has a soul and people want to engage with it, because customers are savvy and they can read through it and they don't want to be sold to all the time. And so I think it's really important that you think about that when you're starting a company. And on that same note, I think that a lot of people, you asked me like what the big mistakes were. I think a big mistake is that a lot of entrepreneurs wait until they think like everything needs to be perfect and like everything needs to be in line. One of the greatest things that was ever shared with me on my podcast, this woman Rachel Liverman shared, and I share this story a lot, shared with me that she knew she was going to start a company in the beauty space. She didn't exactly know what it was going to be, but she had this idea that she was going to start something towards women that was in the aesthetic space. So she just started an Instagram account. She literally just started an account and she started talking to the woman that she thought she was going to market to. And she ended up opening this business called Glow Bar, which is it's express facials, and they're like facial like salons, and they're all over New York, they're all over the East Coast. And when she opened her first one, there was a line around the block because she had already built the community and the trust through her social media. So the point is do not wait until everything's in line and you're ready to open your doors. Like if you have an idea, you can take some steps and get things going without making it perfect. Those I think would be the two biggest things from an entrepreneurship standpoint.
And
There are
your
more, but
Yeah, your story really shows too that you got to do things for the right reasons. The right. I think a lot of people go into business for the wrong reasons, and then they probably struggle. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So you have this big community, you have this following, 90,000 followers, you got your podcast, you do all that. How do you keep that community strong and growing? I would assume you don't come up with a brand new idea every day. So how do you keep them interested and that they hang around?
so I have a couple of touch points that I really am consistent on, and I think that consistency is key. Like when I'm talking to my mentees, I'm like, you have to be consistent. So we try to drop a podcast every week. I'm at the point now where, every now and then my schedule doesn't align and I don't drop an episode, and it's okay because we've dropped 300 of them already. And so I'll either do like a rerun or I just won't drop anything and I'll say listen to the old episodes today. But I have my podcast which we drop almost every week. I have a newsletter which the free version comes out once a week, and then I do a premium version usually once a week or once every other week. And then on social media, I share things almost every day. I share things both on my personal account, Lindsay Pinchuk, and then most of my business stuff is on Dear Found Her. The best part about all of this is when you've been creating content for this long, you have so much content that you can repurpose. And that's a very big piece of what I teach my mentees. You don't have to always be starting from scratch. Oftentimes I'll go back and I'll pull a solo episode from the podcast from 3 years ago, and I'll drop the transcription into ChatGPT and I'll say, hey, Chat, can you come up with an idea for me to share on social media that goes along with this today? And I really repurpose and reuse the content. And the reason I do this is because I have these core messages that I'm sharing over and over and over again. So it's okay to do that. I'm not really coming up with new ideas. I'm really sharing the same themes, the same messages, because that's in my opinion, how you build a business. And so that's what I teach. And so that's what I practice.
So you just explained a lot of things you do during the week. You got a business, you got all these people that are in your cohorts, you've got all these followers. How do you do it all? You got a couple kids. How do you stay I don't like the word balance, but how do you stay grounded, so to speak, and not get carried away with it all?
I don't like the word balanced either. I don't think that balance exists, but I think the biggest thing is I have these processes. And so when it comes to my business, there are a lot of processes in place that have been in place for years. And so it's easy for me. It's like second nature for me to, when I get a podcast episode, for example, to set up the social media, to set up the newsletter, that kind of stuff only takes an hour or two. I do have a couple of virtual assistants. I am actually hiring someone right now because I lost one. I fired one. So so I'm rehiring someone. But I do have some help, and I do not produce my podcast myself. I have a production company who does it. So I think the answer to your question is I really try to find help where I can't do things on my own, or where my time is served better elsewhere, and I have no problems with that. Like for example, I do speaking engagements, and a lot of them are very reactionary. I don't really seek them out, but I have a person who manages that. When the requests come in, I send them to her and she deals with it. And then we come to an agreement and all I have to do is get on the plane and show up. That takes a lot of time out of the action of you know the request, from the request to the show up. But I do have no problem asking for help, and I think moving into next year, that's going to be a very big piece of growing my business, is giving more to the virtual assistant or potentially even hiring someone full time.
So from an income perspective, you're making money to feed your family and live your life. You have sponsors for your podcast. You have a cohort that is paying you money. How do you make money from social media, or does social media just funnel into those other buckets?
I make a little bit of money from social media. It's not that much, to be honest. Like I have some affiliate links. I would say it's like pocket change, to be very honest. The other way that I make money is I have a consulting client, which, I mean, I'm really trying to phase out of the consulting, but I love this client so much, and my contract is through next year. So I do some consulting, and for me, it is some of the best work that I do, to be very honest, because it's a client who is very, very important to me from a humanitarian aspect. And so that's another way that I make money. But I would say this year, once I look at my bottom line and we end up looking at my books in the next 4 weeks, I think that Dear Found Her is definitely going to have well surpassed my consulting revenue. We hosted some big events this year as well. And so we had some revenue from that with sponsors. And then of course the cohorts. And I would say the cohorts and my networking group are a very big piece of my revenue.
Yeah. I've heard you on another podcast say that you're a believer, as am I, that we probably learn a lot more from our mistakes than our successes. So, can you share a true story mistake that you made early in your career or when you're building a business and what did you learn from it?
Yes, I wonder if you heard the story that I'm going to share, because I share it a lot, but so I don't know. So and I just shared it on social media a couple of weeks ago, actually. I Early on in my business, I would say it was 2010, 2012. It was probably 2 years in. My family and we were getting ready. It was me and my husband, and I only had one daughter at the time. We were getting ready to go to the high holiday services at our temple, and there was a knock on our door, and it was the IRS. And I was like, I was like dressed up in my service dress, and I was like, we were all ready to go, and I was like, hello, and they're like, you haven't been filing your taxes, and I'm like, what? And I was so taken aback. I had no idea like what was even going on. And I called up my tax accountant, who was a referral from a friend, and he ignored my calls.
Oh gosh.
And so I finally got like the head of the firm on the phone, and it turned out that I was signing the papers and he wasn't sending them in. And I didn't know. And I also didn't know because I had never done any of this before. This was so out of my wheelhouse. I mean, I came from corporate America where like they took the taxes out of your paycheck and then at the end of the year you paid your taxes and or you got money back, which we often did. And that was it. And so what this taught me was a lot of things. Number one, that you can't just rely on the people that you're hiring to do the things for you. You really need to know and to understand and to be able to read your books and to know what is needed of you and your business so you don't get in trouble. So now I have a tax accountant who really explains things to me, and that's a very big piece of our relationship is I need you to explain these things to me because I want to know and understand, like I'm not beyond comprehension. I also immediately, especially this time around, I hired a bookkeeper. I meet with the bookkeeper once a month. We have a very regular relationship. I also do all my invoicing right now. It's not much. It's like, a lot of it's automated and people pay online for things, so it's not much, but I understand how to read my numbers and I understand what is necessary and that was a very big learning lesson to not place trust in someone who hasn't earned it. And he hadn't earned my trust. He was just a referral of someone. And
Wow.
so that was something that happened early on. I freaked out. I mean, it was very scary. I freaked
Oh,
out.
I can only imagine. Talk about a heart attack. It's and I had not heard that story, so that isn't the one I was referring to.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I heard you on another podcast with another female podcaster, and you were talking about incorporating your female identity. And so, how do you leverage that, in the business world? What does that mean to you, and what were you trying to say? What is it about your?
I don't even know what I was talking about, but I think that a big piece of what I do and have always done has been to support women and a big piece of like my whole business in entrepreneurship has been supporting women and showing women that they can do things. And the bigger thing for me now is showing my daughters that they can do things. I have two girls and I don't ever want them to say, well, I'm a girl, I can't do that, or I'm a woman, I'm not able to be a part of that. Women can do anything, and it's really really important to me to show up and to show that and to lead by example.
Yeah, yeah. In anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything that I haven't asked or we haven't touched on that you want to be sure and get in the program today?
No, this has been such a great conversation and I so have appreciated all of your thoughtful questions.
Well, I will have to admit that when you were going to be on the program and I was doing the research and I saw how successful your podcast
Mhm.
is, I'm thinking, holy cow, how am I going to, she's probably way better at this than I am. And I was intimidated by you. So,
No, you've been great. And it was funny because Sam told me that you were like, he wants to know why you want to be on his show. And it's very important to me to talk to and to share this information with anyone and everyone. And your show is an amazing show. You cover a very important topic. And to me, it wasn't like, I think you even asked her, like, she has a much bigger following than me, but it's not even about that. It's not about the following. It's about the content and the context. And what you talk about is so important. And I'm so happy to be able to lend my experience here for your community. And again, to lead by example.
well, thank you for saying that. But then it goes back to what we talked about earlier, doing things for the right reasons. It's not just chasing the numbers. It's not just trying to say, I'm better than you or I'm bigger than you or whatever. It's like, no, I want to spread the word and here's something that looks like I could do that. So, no, I appreciate that mindset and it's what I like to live to as well. At this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question, and that question is in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Pearl of wisdom that I would leave you with today is to tune out the noise. Don't listen to what other people say. Trust your instincts, trust your gut. There's going to be a lot of noise when you're in a leadership position. Everyone has an opinion, everyone wants to critique you, applaud you, whatever it might be, but you're in that position for a reason. So stay the course and tune the noise out.
Well said. Lindsay, this has been a real pleasure. You're a breath of fresh air. I can hear
Oh,
your
thank
passion.
you.
I love all you have to offer, and I think you're doing great things in the world. So, It's been a great interview. I really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Steve, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, take care and have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.